So, in the year 2026, Americans wagered a projected $150 billion on sports betting.
Right, which is just a staggering amount of money.
It's massive. And at that same time, the NAACP was basically begging star athletes to abandon Southern colleges, while Gen Z, they started panic buying early 2000s flip phones to literally escape the internet.
Yeah, talk about cultural whiplash.
Exactly. And if you want to make sense of how all those chaotic threads actually connect, the best place to look isn't, a formal history book or a meticulously curated museum exhibit.
Oh, definitely not. Usually when we look for historical records, we want something that's been cleaned up, right? We want the serious, polished version.
But the reality of living through history is incredibly messy. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are unpacking a highly entertaining, deeply opinionated, just freewheeling local radio broadcast from May 31st, 2026. It's called Past Week, Next Week.
And we should probably establish some ground rules before we get into it.
Yes, definitely. Because this broadcast touches on highly charged pop culture and politics, we are treating it purely as anthropologists today.
Right, we are just observing.
Exactly. We aren't here to endorse the original broadcaster's left-wing or right-wing views, and we're not taking sides in their debates. Our mission is simply to study the cultural arguments they make, because they serve as this raw, unfiltered snapshot of the zeitgeist at that exact moment.
We're looking at the messy reality of what people were actually talking about when the microphones were on and, the filters were completely off.
Totally. And the radio show kicks off with music, specifically the 80s band Morris Day and the Time, which actually gave me one of my favorite pieces of trivia I've heard in a long time.
Oh, the Prince connection?
Yes. I had no idea that Prince essentially created this band from scratch.
It's so wild.
Right. He produced them. He wrote the songs. He even sang all the backup vocals on their first album. He just built it as a vehicle for his friend Morris Day to front.
Yeah, Prince was literally the musical genius behind the curtain, playing the instruments and layering the vocals, while Morris Day was just the charismatic focal point. It's a great piece of pop music history.
It really is. But the nostalgia trip doesn't last long because the radio hosts use Morris Day to abruptly pivot into some really heavy political territory.
They do, yeah. They jump right into it.
They start dissecting Donald Trump's 250th American celebration event. And apparently, a massive chunk of the musical acts that were allegedly slated to perform suddenly withdrew.
A huge chunk.
We're talking Morris Day, Bret Michaels, Martina McBride, and even the famously lip-sync duo Milli Vanilli.
Which is quite the lineup to lose.
Yeah, and because the lineup just completely evaporated, Trump declared that he was going to just be the headliner himself.
Which paints this incredible visual of a political rally functioning like a failed music festival.
Right.
Like the promoter ends up having to take the mic because the entire lineup just packs up and goes home.
Exactly. It's like a disastrous Coachella or something. And looking at how the broadcasters react to this, it feels like the ultimate currency here isn't just the politics of the event.
No, it's about being cool.
Yes. Effortless cool. The hosts are utterly obsessed with how Morris Day handled his withdrawal.
Because he didn't really say much at all, did he?
No. He just posted a simple graphic on Facebook that said, "It's a no for me."
Wow, just that.
Just that. He didn't issue a multi-page press release. He didn't go on some big press tour. Just, "It's a no for me. Done." Why does a musician's refusal to play a political event carry so much cultural weight for these radio hosts?
Well, silence, or at least extreme brevity, is a massive power move.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the hosts actively contrast Morris Day's quiet withdrawal with another artist who was booked for the event, Freedom Williams from C+C Music Factory.
Oh, the bathroom video?
Yes. According to the broadcast, Williams posted this frantic defensive video shot in a bathroom with peeling wallpaper.
Not a great look.
Not at all. He's basically having a meltdown, defending his right to take a gig and make money, while simultaneously yelling about how he doesn't actually support Trump.
And he brings up vaccines entirely out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, completely out of left field. And the hosts absolutely tear him apart for it.
I mean, I can see why. It's just messy.
Because in a highly polarized environment, over-explaining yourself admits vulnerability to the mob.
Ah, right. You're showing weakness.
Exactly. To the radio hosts, cultural cachet and coolness are deeply tied to unbothered political defiance. Freedom Williams looked compromised because he was frantically trying to play both sides, keeping the paycheck while begging for social approval.
Well, Morris Day looked principled because he simply drew a line in the sand and walked away.
Precisely. When an artist refuses a massive paycheck without feeling the need to justify it, it validates the broadcaster's own political frustrations. It feels like an actual victory to them.
And that idea of withholding your performance, of drawing a line in the sand, that actually lays the groundwork for the heaviest segment of their broadcast.
Yeah, this is where it takes a serious turn.
They move from the symbolic defiance of 80s pop stars to a very raw discussion about systemic political action and historical trauma.
The conversation shifts from pop culture posturing to actual grassroots reality. And it starts with a deeply personal story about historical erasure.
Right. One of the radio hosts, a guy named Boogie, talks about going down to a massive, peaceful black biker rally and celebration in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
In the Greenwood area, right?
Yes, specifically in Greenwood, famously known as Black Wall Street. He describes this beautiful, soul-nourishing vibe with biker clubs from all over the country just grilling and hanging out together.
Sounds amazing.
It does. But then Boogie, who is black, admits on the ad that he didn't even learn about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre until he watched the HBO superhero show Watchmen just a few years prior.
Which is just a staggering admission. And another host immediately chimes in and says they know someone who lived just an hour away from Tulsa their entire life and also had absolutely no idea the massacre happened until they saw that same television show.
It's a profound realization to hear happen live on the radio. Like, the cognitive dissonance of learning about one of the most significant, devastating incidents of racial violence in American history alongside a fictional story about vigilantes and glowing blue super beings.
Right. It highlights a massive structural blind spot in American history education.
The fact that pop culture had to do the heavy lifting of formal education is incredibly jarring for the hosts.
And they use that frustration over historical erasure to fuel a conversation about what is happening in the present day.
Right, because if the history was swept under the rug, they're hyper-vigilant about the political maneuvers happening right now.
Exactly. They detail a modern-day boycott being organized by the NAACP, urging black athletes to refuse to play for colleges in southern states.
Specifically calling out Florida, Texas, Alabama, and Louisiana.
Yes. And the mechanics behind this boycott, at least as the hosts explain it, are tied directly to the Supreme Court.
Right, because after the court gutted key provisions of the Voting Rights Act, these specific states immediately moved to redraw their voting maps.
And the NAACP's argument is that these new maps were explicitly designed to dismantle black political power and dilute minority representation.
So the underlying logic is this stark economic and political paradox. These states relied on black athletes to come to their universities, fill their massive stadiums, and generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and prestige.
But simultaneously, the state governments are signing off on legislation and voting maps that deny those exact same athletes' home communities a political voice.
So the rallying cry becomes millions in revenue, zero political representation. You can't have the labor if you dismantle the rights.
A very powerful argument.
I understand the power of that statement, I really do. But listening to the broadcast, I couldn't help but push back on the reality of it.
How so?
I mean, we are talking about asking a 19-year-old kid who might be coming from a severely disadvantaged background to turn down life-changing NIL endorsement money or a full-ride scholarship to a powerhouse school like Alabama. Asking a teenager to shoulder the burden of political integrity and sacrifice millions of dollars feels almost impossibly unfair.
It is an incredibly heavy burden. And honestly, the most authentic moment of the radio show is when the hosts admit that very thing.
Yeah, they don't pretend it's an easy choice.
Not at all. They openly acknowledge that if they were in that kid's shoes, staring down life-changing money, it would be agonizing to walk away.
One of the hosts even jokes, I hope they take the money, kick ass, and then transfer the next year just to screw the school over.
Right. They realize the hypocrisy of demanding martyrdom from a teenager. But the reason this boycott resonates so deeply with them, even with its practical flaws, becomes obvious when you look at the barrage of other news they cover in that same hour.
It's just relentless.
It is. They are tracking a United States Senator, Andy Kim, being pepper sprayed by icy immigration agents outside a detention facility in New Jersey.
God.
And they are tracking a 3-judge panel blocking Alabama's redrawn congressional map for intentionally disadvantaging black voters.
The environment they are describing is it's paralyzing.
That's the core of it. The broadcasters are expressing a profound, almost paralyzing exhaustion with a political system they feel operates with complete callousness.
Everyday people feel like they have zero structural power.
Exactly. The NAACP boycott represents one of the few tangible avenues where they feel someone, in this case, star athletes, actually possesses the leverage to force the system to pay attention.
They're looking for anyone who has the power to simply say, it's a no for me, and actually make it hurt.
Yes, like Morris Day, but on a systemic level.
But that level of constant, high-stakes political vigilance is exhausting. And you hear that exhaustion completely alter the second half of their broadcast.
That's a very stark transition.
When the real world requires that much heavy lifting, how we consume media and entertainment fundamentally changes. People are desperately looking for an escape, but the entertainment landscape in 2026 is fracturing under the pressure.
The reliable cultural unifiers are just disappearing.
We see that in the box office versus streaming numbers they bring up. The movie The Mandalorian and Grogu opened at #1 in theaters, but the hosts note it had the lowest opening weekend for any Disney-era Star Wars theatrical release.
Wow.
Meanwhile, people's attention is entirely scattered. Comedian Nate Bargatze is starring in a feature film called The Breadwinner, and there's a live-action Spider-Man noir series streaming in black and white on Prime Video starring a 60-year-old Nicolas Cage.
Which sounds completely surreal.
Totally. The urgency to all gather in one place for a blockbuster is just gone. One of the hosts literally shrugs and says he'll just catch Star Wars when it streams.
But while traditional cinema might be softening, there's one sector of digital entertainment that has become aggressively inescapable, and it's heavily contributing to that feeling of societal burnout.
Oh, the sports betting. What blew my mind was looking at the numbers driving this. The broadcast cites industry analysts projecting that Americans will wager $150 billion legally on sports betting in this single year.
$150 billion.
It's just astronomical. And to fuel that machine, the airwaves and internet feeds are absolutely saturated with high-octane gambling advertisements featuring every celebrity imaginable.
Right. Kevin Hart, John Hamm, you name it.
And the broadcasters complain about feeling totally suffocated by it.
The sheer volume of content, combined with the algorithmic push to constantly bet, engage, and react, is creating a profound sensory overload.
It makes me think of algorithmic feeds as a slot machine that never lets you walk away.
That's a great way to put it.
It's an all-you-can-eat digital buffet, and they just keep shoving plates of content and gambling ads in our faces until our brains short-circuit. Which actually ties into a hilarious, very real news story the hosts cover about a Spanish restaurant called Sushi Toro.
Oh, the vomit fee.
Yes, this all-you-can-eat spot actually introduced a vomit fee to penalize overeaters. They warn customers that anyone who eats until they throw up will be charged extra.
And the newsreader on the broadcast summarized it perfectly. He said, "Diarrhea and regret will always be included free of charge."
That line killed me. But if we take that vomit fee and apply it to our media diets right now, people are gorging themselves on the $150 billion betting industry, the endless streaming options, and the heavy political news until they are quite literally sick.
They're completely overstuffed.
So how do you escape the buffet before you have to pay the fee?
Well, you introduce physical friction. And this brings up one of the most fascinating behavioral shifts covered in the deep dive, the rise of the digital detox.
Oh, this was fascinating.
Gen Z consumers, the demographic that has never known a world without the internet, are actively driving a massive spike in sales for retro early 2000s clamshell flip phones.
They are abandoning smartphones entirely.
Because they need a barrier to doom scrolling.
Right.
Think about it. When you have a flip phone with T9 texting, it takes 3 separate button presses just to type the letter C.
I remember those days. It was exhausting.
But that physical friction is a feature now, not a bug. It prevents you from getting sucked into a 2-hour algorithmic rabbit hole. They are seeking out devices that offer nothing but basic calls and texts to escape the constant buzzing anxiety of notifications.
They're choosing a sort of digital monastic silence because the burnout from the dopamine loop is so severe.
Exactly.
And what's wild is that this cultural exhaustion doesn't just apply to screen time. It extends to the people on the screens. The fatigue with hustle culture and hyper-ambition has reached a boiling point.
Oh, the celebrity rant.
Yes. One of the radio hosts goes on this incredibly relatable rant about watching documentaries on Taylor Swift and Paul McCartney.
2 of the most prolific, universally beloved, and undeniably successful musicians in human history.
Right. But the host says that watching them is just exhausting. He sees their hyper-ambitious lives, the endless tour planning, the constant output, the relentless drive to be the best, and it just makes him tired.
He actually says on the air, "People with ambition piss me off. My dear friends are just lazy, low-ambition people.
I mean, it sounds like a joke, but it reflects a deep societal fatigue.
It really does. The constant demand for output, whether you're an algorithm feeding gambling ads or a pop star playing 3-hour stadium shows, is starting to actively repel people. Sometimes the most comforting thing in the world is just being around someone who expects absolutely nothing from you.
So true. When you are that burned out from the digital buffet and that exhausted by the political heaviness of the world, how do you take back control?
You start rejecting things.
Exactly. Which explains why these hosts spend the last segment of their show aggressively, passionately hating universally loved things.
It is a deliberate pivot from the heavy and uncontrollable to the trivial and entirely controllable. They run a feature on the show with a very simple prompt. What is something universally beloved that you genuinely hate?
And the hit list they generate is a masterpiece of contrarianism.
It's so funny. They don't hold back at all.
Not even a little bit. They confess to hating actors Jason Segel and Jason Sudeikis, and by extension, they hate the show Ted Lasso, which feels like an actual crime in most social circles.
The list is entirely chaotic.
Wow.
One host despises Zoe Saldana playing Nina Simone. Another hates Elton John, claiming his lyrics make absolutely no sense.
They hate U2, they hate Bob Dylan, and then they move on to food, which is where it gets really heated.
Food opinions always do.
Someone vehemently hates sweet potatoes. Another person hates Eggs Benedict, specifically the hollandaise sauce, which they just cannot stand.
One host hates onions. Another thinks Chick-fil-A is wildly overrated and refuses to wait in line for it. Someone hates tiramisu.
And they even take aim at massive pop culture monoliths. One of the hosts admits to walking out of a midnight showing of The Lord of the Rings because he hated it so much.
Another host refuses to watch any movie with sand in it.
Wait, sand?
Yeah, movies with sand in them. Specifically calling out Dune and The Mummy.
That is incredibly specific. They also hate the sport of basketball. Starbucks coffee. And my personal favorite, the grand finale. One of the hosts aggressively, passionately hates the act of traveling.
Just traveling in general.
Yes. He says he gets to a new city, looks around for 10 minutes, and immediately just wants to be back on his own couch in his own house.
I mean, we've all been there.
Listening to this, it is incredibly fun to hear people tear down sweet potatoes and Ted Lasso, but it feels like there is a deeper psychological mechanism at play here. Why does it feel so good to vocalize what we hate?
Well, what you're hearing is a psychological concept known as negative cohesion.
Negative cohesion.
Yes. In sociology, shared dislikes often forge much stronger interpersonal bonds than shared likes. Think about the broader context of their world. They are navigating a gutted Voting Rights Act, ICE pepper spraying senators, historical trauma, and a $150 billion casino living in their pockets.
Right. That environment is terrifying and isolating because it is so far out of their individual control.
You can't single-handedly fix the voting maps or stop the gambling ads.
Precisely.
But what you can control is your stance on hollandaise sauce.
Exactly.
Rejecting something trivial like proudly declaring you use an Android instead of an Apple iPhone, or announcing that the Beatles are overrated, builds a very specific, safe in-group identity. It is a low-stakes rebellion.
It's taking back some sort of agency.
Right. It signals a shared vulnerability and a willingness to break from societal norms without causing actual harm. When you find someone who shares your irrational hatred of movies with sand in them, you feel seen. It creates instant camaraderie and serves as a vital pressure release valve in a world that demands constant, serious vigilance.
It's a safe space to just be a hater for 10 minutes and catch your breath.
Exactly.
Looking at the full arc of this deep dive, it's amazing how much ground a single Sunday afternoon comedy show covers. We started with the currency of coolness, looking at how Morris Day simply saying, "It's a no for me," became a powerful political statement against a frantic compromise backdrop.
And then we moved into the sobering reality of historical blind spots with Tulsa's Black Wall Street.
Right, and the agonizing systemic leverage of the NAACP, asking young athletes to withhold their labor from universities to protest dismantled voting rights.
We track the sheer overwhelming burnout of the modern media diet, from fracturing box office numbers to the $150 billion sports betting machine.
And how it's driving Gen Z to seek monastic silence through retro flip phones.
And finally, we explored the catharsis of negative cohesion, finding comfort and community in the simple, low-stakes joy of hating universally beloved things.
It's a wild, chaotic snapshot of 2026, but it is a perfect reflection of how we actually experience life. You, me, the people on this broadcast, we all have to process massive, terrifying societal shifts right alongside our trivial personal annoyances every single day.
Formal history might try to separate the profound from the petty, but the reality is that we are worrying about the future of democracy in one breath and fiercely complaining about onions in our meatballs in the very next.
It is the unedited reality of the human experience. So, we're going to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you go about your day. We talked about how negative cohesion bonding over shared dislikes acts as a low-stakes rebellion against an exhausting world.
Right.
Think about your own life. If you had to pick one universally beloved thing that you secretly despise your own personal Elton John or sweet potato, what would it be? And more importantly, what does your choice say about your own personal rebellion against the mainstream? Think about it. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.